Yes, I was born there in the 1942. It was at a time when Germany occupied France. My sister has a French birth certificate and I actually have a German birth certificate. And I was there until I was 3, but during the time I was there it seemed as though, because it had been occupied by Germany and then by the end of the war the French had taken over. My early memories of being in Alsace was sitting at the side of hills waiting for trains to come by, because obviously we were going out of the troubled areas whenever it was a troubled area. My mother speaks of a time where we were on a train that was bombed and only 2 of the carriages were clear. She had to put us out of the window, and there was apparently some soldiers at the other side and they took us out. She was afraid of us being trampled on.
Oh, that must have been really terrifying sometimes.
Well, my mother said she was great at times of real problems. It was when afterwards that she felt she almost broke down, that she was so busy just trying to survive and maintain us, really. But after the war had ended, my father now had been in the French army, but he had been born. He was an Alsatian and had gone to school in Germany. And while he was in school in Germany, he was in the Hitler Youth movement. And so when the war broke out, he was living in France and he was called into the French army. But when the French were losing the war in Alsace, my father changed over to be in the German army because he had these Hitler Youth movement connections. Became a political prisoner at the end of the war. And when my mother realised that she was on her own and with the 2 children and my father was going to be in prison, my great uncle in Ireland invited her to come over with the 2 of us.
You travelled to Ireland?
Yes, I remember the journey back actually. There was 2 aeroplanes there, and when I arrived into Ireland, we had quite a lot of problems because my mother didn't have a passport and we had to be accepted in as refugees.
Gerda, what happened to your father?
Yes, my father came over when I was about 10 or 11. I'm not 100% sure exactly. There was one day that my mother, to try to get him to communicate with us and so on and do things with us, some neighbour had left in some apples one time. And so we followed our father downstairs and he gave us the apple, a big plate full of apples, which I picked one up and there was a wormhole in it. And so I put it back, and then there was another one and it had a bruise on it, because these were windfalls, I suppose. And I picked up another one, and when I was picking up the 3rd one, my father swung the plate away from me. But I know he just grabbed the apple and dumped it into my hand, and he shouted out words that I didn't understand, but I did get the energy that it definitely was not what he liked. It wasn't until I was about 17 years of age when I had gone into a room that my father was talking to some friends, and he was telling them about a time that he had walked. They had to, himself and other prisoners had to walk 20 miles a day, and all they had to eat was, all they were given was 2 spoonfuls of flour. One day when they were walking, they saw a mouldy piece of bread floating in the river, and all men, he said, ran out of line to grasp the mouldy piece of bread. And it was in that moment, when I heard that story, I connected immediately with the reaction that he had made to me when I was looking for the perfect apple. And I recognized that we cannot judge another person. That here he was, coming from his experiences in life and reacting, and it must have been awful for him to think that here was a daughter of his being so choosy about food and not being grateful. And also about life in general, because we do jump too quickly to making judgments about where people are coming from and but for the grace of God, go on. He was never really, like he'd been in a concentration camp with the Russians at one time before he was in as a political prisoner. He wasn't really disturbed in many ways, he was coping very well, but I really do know anybody who's been through horrific experiences of wartime is ever the same as a person who's never had those experiences. I was very lucky. A friend of mine who knew me before I got married, because my name had been Friedrich, and she rang me to tell me that a man called Friedrich had come in, Jack Friedrich had come into the nursing home which she was nursing in, and could this be a relation of mine? I went in immediately to him, and then she rang me again another time, and it was hard to know if he recognised me at all. But when I was with him on the day he was dying, because she rang me up to tell me that the doctor said he wouldn't be long before he died, and I went in and saw him, and I was sitting talking to him, and he was in a coma now, but it was very, very healing for me too, because I was able to talk to him about our lives and how the difficulties and what I had seen. But one time one of the nurses came in and she said, "Wow," she said, "it seems so peaceful in here."
Gerda, when did you first notice that your sight was impaired?
Well, the first time I noticed that my sight was impaired, my parents were more aware that my sight was impaired. When I came back from a film, I was coming through the driveway of our house, and it was all dark for me, and I saw the light outside where the door was. I ran to it because it was dark and I was a little nervous. I walked to the gate of our house with a friend, and she'd gone on, and I was left there, and I was finding my way to the hall door when I ran into the car that was stationary and cut my shin. And then my great uncle suggested that I should go to see an eye specialist. My parents were told that I had a very serious eye condition and that was leading to blindness, but I still feel I'm only just visually impaired.
Could you tell us how this affected your life?
Well, at the beginning I didn't want it to really affect my life. I was always wanting to try and do as much as I could myself, and it was always like a challenge in many ways. I got a motorbike when I was 20 years of age. It was a Honda 50cc, it was a Cub motorbike. And I remember going in one time to my eye specialist with the helmet under my arm and chatting to him, and he said, "What's the helmet?" And I was saying, "Well, I've got a motorbike, it's a 50cc Honda, I was all excited about getting it." And he said to me, "You shouldn't be driving with your sight." And I said, "But I'm being very careful, I'm looking left and right all the time." He said, "Well, I suppose," he said, "there's no law in this land that says that if you can't see properly, you can't drive." And so it was at that time. I then found that my sight, I'd fallen a couple of times, and an odd time I would use my white stick, but there was times where, the white stick doesn't tell you where the hall door is or the way out, or when I was with the eye specialist in the eye and ear, they asked me if I'd like to see a counsellor, and she suggested I get a guide dog, and this Angel now is my second guide dog, and Angel is a Labradoodle. She'll be retiring in 2 years. Look, she's saying hello. She's really very beautiful and very good, but she's far too friendly to people.
Do you think your early experience in Alsace has a positive effect on you personally or now?
I think definitely it did, and seeing my mother in the way she reacted always with great calm during any of the difficulties that we would have been in. I do believe that we do learn and pick up from our early childhood.
Do you think of Alsace and how your life would have been had you stayed there?
I don't really. I don't regret. It wasn't my choice to stay or go. been back there. I have a half brother living in Alsace, and I've gone and visited there. And it was interesting that I actually felt as though I was at home. Yeah, when I went to the place, there was a sort of feeling I recognised a hill that was there. Thought I'd been here before, but no, I don't know. I don't think much of it. It was too long ago.